Hello. Today we're going to be talking about the art of design. And sorry about my glasses glare. I've walked in a bunch of places and apparently can't get rid of it today. Alright, here we go. So, designers have homework before they get into meetings. And this isn't homework in the conventional sense that you have homework, it's doing their research. You have to take a ton of time to do research to kind of figure out a better idea of like what the play is telling you and what you're going to gather from the play. Here are some questions designers might ask. How does the play's environment affect and reflect the story and the characters? How do the story and characters affect and reflect the environment? What significant details of the environment will define and individualize the characters? How do the characters feel about their environment? How does the environment relate to the play's theme? Is the personal environment in or out of harmony with the characters? Okay, so what does all that mean? So with an environment, like let's say your play is set in a future dystopia, what does that mean for them? How are they going to react to it? Or if the environment of the play is something where there's like chaotic political unrest, what does that mean for the play or the characters, and how is that going to affect them? Are they a part of a rebellion? How does that affect the environment? Or, and I'm making all of this up as I go, or like if there's a significant detail in the environment, like in Avatar, there's like, nope, that's a terrible example. Like if there's like a sacred tree or a sacred shrine, I'm still trying to go with Avatar, but it's been like 10 years since I've seen that, I think. But yeah, so is there like something sacred that like the community and everybody reacts to and they have, and that's like something sacred? Like what does that do for them? What does it do for the culture of the place? There are historical considerations. What is the time period of the play? What was the religious, social, and political climate of that period? What was the religious, social, and political climate when the play was written? Alright, so why does time period matter? So the time period of the play, if you're set in a certain time period, you want your costumes to look like that. You want maybe the lighting fixtures on stage. Obviously, it's not going to be gas lamps if you're doing a play before electricity, but you want them to look like gas lamps. So you have to take things like that into consideration if your play is actually set in an actual time period. What was the political climate or social political climate of the period? Do they have a king? Are you not allowed to talk bad about like hierarchy? And because back in England and stuff, it used to be that you can't talk or say anything about the King of England. Now you totally can, but back then, like, does that make the characters more like timid? Does that make how does that affect everything? And you got to think about the social, religious, and political climate when the play was written. If somebody wrote a play about things that are happening right now, like, and we do it in like 30 years, people aren't going to remember, or if it's done in 100 years, they might not remember what was happening during coronavirus, but maybe they have to do research and figure it out and kind of think about how it would be for us. So you have to do all those types of research too to kind of better know your characters. And then the last type of kind of homework they have to do is they have to think about practical things. These things are like, what are the mechanical requirements, such as the number of doors needed for the exits? A lot of times this is something that's outlined in the script. What are the budgetary limitations? Sure, you might be doing, a lot of times community theaters, they do musicals, like Addams Family or Legally Blonde, and you see those shows on Broadway, and those sets are huge. They have a ton of money. So it's like, how do you bring that same theater magic of some of it to a smaller theater company who doesn't have as much money? What are the deadlines? Can you make like a huge set if you have only 6 weeks to build it? How much manpower do you have? Like, what can you actually do with what you have in your resources? What are the physical limitations of the stage? If you're in a very, very small black box theater, you can't have giant moving set pieces. you need like a bigger proscenium stage, which we'll get into the types of stage in a second, but you can't do that in a smaller space. So you have to think about maybe your set has to be stationary and nothing really moves except for maybe furniture on and off. And then what are the physical dimensions of the theater in which the play will be performed? So designers do all of this kind of research. You get hired, then you do some research, and before you meet your director for the first time, you should have not all of the knowledge and everything worked out, but you should have a pretty good starting off point, because you'll have something called design meetings. And these design team meetings, the purpose of these meetings is to define a central metaphor for the play, accommodate the physical limitations of the theater in which the play will be performed, determine and set the budget, and work out scheduling for each aspect of the production. So you would have, we haven't really talked about a production manager. So a stage manager, which we've totally talked about, they manage the stage and kind of like the actors, and they're like a messenger, and they take care of like the in-house like business. A production manager would be one job above, and they kind of handle all of the technical deadlines. They handle the budget, and so they're the person who's going to be talking at these types of meetings and telling you things. So they would normally make out a calendar, and there are all these due dates of when things need to be in and when things need to happen, so you make sure that the play, the technical part of the play, is on track, because the stage manager is keeping the actors on track. We're going to go over 4 types of theater spaces. The first space is a proscenium. Proscenium arch theaters are sometimes called picture frame theaters because the arch resembles the frame of a picture. This is the most common type of stage. It was originated in Italy during the Renaissance. Some things that this theater has are aprons, which is the little thrusting lip that comes out past the picture box. The fly system, which is all of the things for things to fly in and out, like your scenery pieces and lighting instruments. And they have wings, which we discussed before, are the little side panels for actors to enter and exit in from. We have thrust stages, which protrude into the audience, and the audience sits on 3 sides. Like the proscenium arch, the thrust theater has been around for hundreds of years. Shakespeare's plays were first performed on a thrust stage. There are arena theaters. Arena theaters, or theaters in the round. The audience surrounds the stage, as in a sports arena. Performing on an arena stage can be a challenge because actors must often shift positions to remain open to the audience. That makes sense. So you can't have your back turned on people. With all these other stages, there's usually a front. So arena's 3 side, but like you see your sides. You can have your back kind of to one end, but within the round, you have to be sure to always have an audience member seeing somebody so they don't see a play of the back of people's head. That would be awful. And lastly, we have the black box theater, also known as studios, flexible space, or experimental theaters, that they came in all shapes and sizes. They are called black box theaters because the walls are almost always painted black, and they often have a box-lined shape. And black box spaces are definitely used for more experimental things. You're allowed to paint the walls, the audience is up close to you, and it's the space that can transform the most. And a lot of times you can move the seating around too. The one we have at school, we always discuss how the audience is going to be formulated. Last year, I think every show we did in that space, the seating was different, which was only 2 shows. But, they were both very different. And one of the shows, I'll show a picture, it was done in a really weird way. So, yeah. And then I guess you can argue, there are also found spaces and like guerrilla theater where you just go and like you do theater in storefronts, or you do theater in like garages or like people's houses. So like anything can be a theater, but these are 4 of the most common spaces that you might see. Theatrical styles. There's realism, which is simplified and selective, expressionism, surrealism, and symbolism. When designing a show, you need to think about filling the empty space. Basic elements of design are thinking about line, dimension, balance, movement, harmony, color, and texture. When designing a set, So we're going to talk a little bit about set designers. They have a strong background in interior design, architecture, and art history, as well as theatrical conventions of various periods. Set designers take the words of the playwright and the ideas of the director and turn them into visual imagery. They draw and draft their art by hand, or they use CAD programs, which is now more common, which are computer-aided designs. Once the director approves the sketch, designers make blueprints called floor plans or ground plans, which is the view from above. Elevations, which is the view from the front and the back. And I'll show you some pictures. I'm going to show you lots of things. Sometimes designers will make the director something called a model box, which is a handmade three-dimensional model of the set. This can be helpful for when you try to find like exits and entrances and you can't really tell on the ground plan or on the tape. So lighting design. A lighting designer creates different moods with light. The first indoor form of lighting was the use of candles during the Renaissance. And yeah, you know, theaters used to burn down a lot because candlelight can catch fire. So they're glad we don't use that anymore. One revolutionary lighting designer, and also he was a set designer too. He wrote like I think one of the first theater like tech books, and he was in the Renaissance. His name was Sebastiano Cirillo. And then I will probably show you a little video about him. The second major shift for lighting occurred in the 1840s with gaslit theaters. And I'm going to show you a little bit about limelight. And then the third major shift occurred in the 1890s with the additions of electricity. Adolphe Appia, the first modern lighting designer.
Here I have this piece of quicklime. I grip it with these tongs. And now I will heat it with this welding torch. I will use these safety glasses. Look at the intense brightness. We almost can see the rest of the scene. Only the glowing stone. This kind of light, known as limelight, was used by the end of the 19th century. By the way, there is a film by Charles Chaplin called Limelight, because of that type of stage lighting once used in theaters and music halls. Without looking directly to the light, and as a tribute to the heroes of the limelight, see you soon.
One of the most important advances in lighting design was the invention of computerized lighting, which allows an entire lighting design, including hundreds of exact cues, to be controlled by a computerized light board called a dimmer. So yeah, with the lighting board, you can do things like a 5-second light fade down while another light fades up for 8 seconds, and you can control a whole bunch of lighting instruments. Before that, you wouldn't have that much control over that many different lights, and so you'd probably have just like a couple faders, and you would put them up manually. But now you can write everything into this little computer thing, and you can just like, the stage manager or the light board op, the person running this board, just has to hit a go button and everything just is already programmed in. So it's pretty amazing. One of the pieces of paperwork a lighting designer has to do, and is helpful for the people who are helping them, is something called a light plot, which is a detailed drawing that shows locations of lighting instruments, wattage, color, and where it will be focused. And focus means like where it's going to be turned and like pointed at, and other details necessary to the lighting design team. A couple of vocab terms for you. Motivated light comes from an identifiable source such as a candle, a table lamp, or the sun. Non-motivated light reinforces the mood of a scene, but doesn't come from an identifiable source on the stage. Here are some things that lighting designers use. Lights can be filtered through gels to make colors. Gels were once made from gelatin, but today are made from plastic and come in thousands of colors. They use patterns, such as sunlight coming through the leaves of the tree, and can be projected on stage with metal cutouts called gobos. And I'm sure you've seen gobos. I don't know. Now people like get them for their weddings and for parties, and it's just a little cutout and it says stuff on the floor. So that's pretty cool. And a lot of times there are LED lights now, which you can just make the light, you program it in the board, and it can change color anytime. But not all theaters have every lighting instrument to be an LED light, so they still use those little gels to pop them in. Sound design. Sound designers need to have a detailed knowledge of acoustics, electronics, digital music, editing programs, audio mixing boards, signal processing equipment, microphones, effects processors, amplifiers. The most common program sound designers use is QLab, which, by the way, only comes on Macs. If you have a PC, you're out of luck. Sound designers are responsible for providing specific sounds called for in the script, like a doorbell, but they also create soundscapes, which are background sounds for the scene, like the sounds of a bustling city. And that's a more common practice today, that you try to like create a whole environment for the entire show, rather just being like, oh, there's a random doorbell and that's all you do. So that's kind of changed in the last 20 years. Costume design. A costume designer must be a visual artist, fashion designer, historian, and psychoanalyst. In order to build a costume, a designer paints or sketches detailed costume plates that the costume construction crew will use to assemble costumes. These sketches indicate how each costume is shaped, where seams and folds are, how the costume flows, and the fabrics that should be used. Some designers even attach fabric swatches to their costume plates. When designing costumes, the costume designer needs to think a little bit about the character, and so they think about the social and economic status, the lifestyle, the age, country, occupation, education, geographical origin, and the historical period, because all of this filters into what that could mean for your character. Here are some vocab terms for you. We have straight makeup, which does not change the actor's look, but makes their faces more three-dimensional and therefore more visible to the audience because the bright theatrical lights wash out their features. This is very true. Even guys wear makeup in theater because the lights are so bright. And then you have character makeup, which is an attempt to transform the way an actor looks. For example, gray hair, wrinkles, and shadows to a youthful actor who must play an old man. And here's some pictures for you. It could also mean like there's a play called Cyrano de Bergerac, and he has a prosthetic nose. That's a big deal because it's all about his nose. So that's character makeup. When you're in Cats, you look like a cat. And then here's a picture of age makeup. Prop design. So set props means anything that sits on the set, including sofas, chairs, and beds. This also includes hand props, or any object that the actor handles while on stage, such as pens, fans, cigars, money, and umbrellas. I will say something about the umbrellas and the fans. So a lot of times a costume designer would want input on this, because you can't give, if a girl has a yellow dress and you're like, oh, I'm going to give her, and she's like supposed to be really cute, and then you give her like an ugly shitty brown umbrella, your costume designer's going to be like, why would she ever be wearing, like, going out with that terrible umbrella? So a lot of times when you have to do props and there are things like that, you have to take into consideration what the costume designer might want. And a lot of times the costume designer will be like, I don't trust you, and I'm just going to do it myself. And you're like, fantastic, one thing off my list. Props also are responsible for set decorations, which are similar to props, except that they're items that are not touched by any actor ever. And so this is things like paintings on the wall, or like a book that never gets touched, or a lamp. All of that is in there. And actually, talking about lamps, so another thing where you have to, if you're doing props, it's your responsibility to go get a lamp, but a lot of times you want to ask the lighting designer what they may think, like what would the desk lamp look like, and then after you buy the lamp, you give it to the lighting designer, because they have to take apart the wiring and make it so they can control it to their light board. So there's definitely a lot of collaboration when it comes with props.
Standby light cues 320 through 330, grand, video, and conductor special. Conductor special, go. Light cue 325, go. Grand, go. My name is Alexandra Fishbein, and I'm a senior theater major concentrating in stage management and arts administration. Right now we're in the booth high above the Hanaway Theater stage, and this is a behind-the-scenes look at Orpheus in the Underworld. Before we can even think about raising the curtain, we have to start building the stage, and we begin with Matt Kaiser, who designs the set.
Part of what you have to do as the designer is solve problems. Designing is always problem solving. So I know how much time we've got to build it, I know how much money there is to go into it. So starting with that, then it's talk to the director, see what he wants to do visually as far as movement goes with the show, come up with sort of an artistic style for the show. And then I do a whole set of drafting. And I give all this to the shop, and Bob Rimmer takes it then, and he budgets it out.
We do an estimate both for student labor and materials, figure out what our challenges are. Stuart Kroll and I generally sit down and start engineering the pieces that we need to build.
I will do typically some working drawings for that. The more technical things are my favorite. In this case, it was the wagons, because they're a little more complicated than normal ones.
You can box it down past the casters.
As soon as that gets done, everything gets busy in the carpentry shop. We come together with a large group of students who all work together really well to make sure that we carry the designer's vision into the set and then onto the stage.
Our student crew comes from a variety of majors all over campus. We also have practicum students that are taking a class so they get experience building this show. Let's get this toenailed in and screwed down, and then we can then we'll do the railing.
Now we're opening and assembling the trap that Eurydice will be entering in to go into the underworld.
We've installed this custom trap with a round circle so that we can open the top, and then actors will be here to pull her down like that.
While we're down here building the set, Bianca and Danae and their wonderful crew are up above us in the costume shop, getting the costumes together for the actors.
Any design I work on starts off with me talking to the director, in this case, Paul. But after I talked to him, I started sketching out designs that I based off of what I could read from the script. These help us as a shop because we're able to look up here and see what we have, what we don't have.
We really came together for this one, and I was actually really impressed with everyone. Since we have to work around our class schedules, with a show this big, it became even more of an emphasis to work as a team. While we are up in the costume shop, working up until the day of the show, the lighting crew is on stage preparing for tech.
We'll have a lighting designer who will provide a light design. And Jason is my master electrician, so he will be responsible for getting that hung and focused and in place using a student crew.
He'll tell me what lights we need, where to put them, what colors to put in them, where they get focused, and it's my job to figure out where everything goes, how much cable it takes, whether or not we have enough circuits in the theater to do that.
If you want to fly that one in, we can start doing that.
Second electric, coming in!
Okay, go slow, slow, slow. Okay, go.
All set?
Working with the students, kind of an hour here and there, mornings and afternoons around class schedules. It takes us about a week and a half to get from a bare stage, empty electrics, to putting all the lights back up.
12, 12. 12 was
What we've got across the back, there's three like fisheye projectors across the back, and those are mounted on a pipe up in the air behind those acoustic shells up there, and that's what's painting that cyclorama, that white wall all across the back. We didn't want to go with, wireless mics on all the performers, so what we did here, we decided we wanted to bring in these acoustic shells flown over the stage, and I already had kind of in the back of my mind an idea of doing what we're doing here, which is using them as a projection surface. We've never really done that before.
We have added another aspect to them, which is putting fabric onto them. This provides a really cool aspect for the actors in the audience because you can see what's going on in the heavens above or the hell below, and it just adds another element to the whole show.
Our deadlines are inflexible. We know when the audience is going to be here, and our student crew is fantastic at pushing when we really need to push to get all that done.
After all of these lights are hung, cabled, colored, patched, and focused, then we go into tech rehearsal.
Sorry, Matt, that was my fault. That wasn't your fault.
195?
Yes.
Now it's hold.
Hold, please. My role as stage manager during tech is that the show becomes my own. The director steps away and I'm put in charge of everything. I work hand in hand with the lighting designer and the crew backstage to make sure that all the technical aspects run smoothly.
Is there another cue coming up?
Yes.
Let's see what it does.
Like cue 195, go.
Tech works cue to cue, meaning that the lighting designer will present a look for a certain part of the show, make sure it's okay, and then we'll move on to the next one.
Go. Stand by light cues 185 through 195 with wagons going with 185.
It's really important to make sure the stage manager, myself, understands what the lighting designer is looking for so that their vision is captured on stage.
Does the video come before or after fog?
After.
Oh, that's so cool. So other than I found a better time to start the fog, were you okay with how the rest of that looked?
After tech weekend, we have 3 days of dress rehearsal, which is a key time for Danae and I to see how the costumes work with the actors and if there's anything that needs to be changed.
I'm watching just to look for costume problems. Some of them might be huge, like somebody's skirt falls down in the middle of a scene. Some things might not be obvious to an audience member, but are very apparent to me.
I am most looking forward to seeing the audience adding a new perspective for the actors, because the actors have a whole new action and reaction when the ambiance and the energy of the audience is sitting. So things that might go normal and like without a beat during rehearsal and tech, it's a whole new experience when everyone is acting.
Well, our students they're learning to do theater here, and it's like riding a bicycle. You only learn it by doing it, and also you get used to what I call production values. No matter how much or how little you've got to work with on a production, you've got to make it beautiful, and it's got to be awesome. And I always tell them the first rule of theater is thou shalt not bore. Everything's just got to be appropriate and correct and polished, and our students come out of here with that ingrained in them, and that's really what it's about.
It is a really special experience to be able to take what we've learned in the classroom and apply it to a production of this size. All of the hands-on experiences during my 4 years at Plymouth State are going to really prepare me for any future endeavors.
Production meetings, paint calls, sleepless nights, like tech, rehearsal, everything. It's been an awesome hands-on experience to see what really goes on and how I have contributed being a part of it.
I specifically picked Plymouth State as my school to attend to because it allows students and stage managers in general to get a real hands-on experience of the show. The most valuable part of it all, though, isn't until the curtain comes down on the very first show, and seeing the audience's appreciation of it and to hear their applause for everything they've just seen. That's how I know I've done my job well. Their backs might be to me, but to see the smiles on their faces as they walk out, it's all you need.
We are at curtain call. Although designers aren't a part of the actual curtain call, meaning the bows on stage, their work is on stage for all to applaud. All right, and